So yeah, my name is Pietari Paivanen and I'm leading some of the special projects at Supercell. But today I'm here talking to you about company culture and how you can actually utilize that as a driving force behind creating long-lasting IPs. But first, let me give you a brief introduction what we are doing as a company, because it's all about the vision behind the culture that we're talking about today. So from the very beginning, since the founding of Supercell, the vision was to create games for as many people as possible that will be played for years and remembered forever. That's the whole vision. And in order to execute that vision, we wanted to create the best place for the best teams to create the best games. Taking a look back to our history, back in 2010, when we first started, you can see this was our first office. You can still see that it was only one small room that could fit roughly the five people that we had at the beginning. The place was so small that our CEO and founder Ilkka Paananen actually had to move to the corridor and use a cardboard box as a table. So that was also an example from the beginning, sort of. He was the man behind Supercell and still thought that he's the least powerful CEO, and that's why he can be the one to be moved outside of the office room. And this is where we are today. This is our new headquarters in Helsinki, built just 2 years ago. Currently, we are roughly 400 people, so still relatively, or actually very small company, thinking of our revenues of over 2 billion and profit of significant figures. So 5 billion installs, hundreds of millions of players every month, and so far 5 launched games, the latest being Brawl Stars, pretty big here in Korea as well, I assume. They have all surpassed $1 billion in revenues. And that's why we've been very strict on the IP creation and the quality of IP. We believe that we want to launch games only if they can be big enough and meaningful enough for millions of players and for many, many years to be played. That's why when we have launched the 5 games, we have killed dozen and dozen of games. And that's one big part of our culture, is to try to fail fast and try to kill fast. And that's why the game teams have the total independency towards their IPs and their games. They make the final call if the game will be launched or not. So then a bit more deeper to the company culture and dive into creating IPs within Supercell. It all actually starts from the very beginning thought of what kind of games company do we want to be, something that I already mentioned at the beginning. And what kind of games do we want to make? As said, and looking a bit deeper to the whole company vision, as said, it's about the great games that as many people play for years, and the games and IPs that will be remembered forever. So that's basically summarizing how we are approaching the whole idea of creating a long-lasting IP. Great game for us means that it needs to have somehow a genre-defining idea. We want to make games that haven't been made before. And that's why we are so slow in launching new games. It's just so difficult to come up with the new ideas that could really change the way people are playing and the way people are thinking of games. For as many people as possible means that we want to create IPs from the beginning, thinking of the global scale, and creating IPs that we believe can be loved all around the world. Probably something that is helping in this is the nature of our company, our history being established in Finland, Helsinki, the country is such a small, you know, in the whole of Finland, we have less people than just in Seoul, or in a small part of Seoul, basically. So we need to, from the beginning, create something global. We cannot operate in domestic markets. That would be like nuts. We're only 5 million in Finland. And to be able to create IPs that are lasting for years, we need to be sure that we can provide a lifetime service for those games. That's actually a promise that we're giving to our players when they download our global launch game. We need to really be dedicated, and we need to stand behind those games and be sure that still after 10 years, after a decade, we can guarantee a good enough service and customer service for our players and keep on evolving the IPs, because that's what the gamers want. And we'll make those games to be remembered forever. We need to be ready to somehow create a cultural phenomenon, and that's where the marketing plays a big part in the whole IP thing. And as told earlier, we believe that best people make the best games, but even more importantly, it's the best teams that make the best games. By this, we mean that the winning team is not the one with the best players. The winning team and the best game team is the one that plays best together. It doesn't matter if you have world's best artists and world's best coders and world's best operational game team. You need to have a team that really work well together, and they share the common vision for that game and for that IP. And that's how the whole company, when we started, was founded on a very sort of clear organizational model that is very different from the traditional gaming companies. So this is how still nowadays most of the traditional games companies look like. Somehow there's a belief that there is this visionary leader, the visionary CEO at the top of everything. He has the vision on what kind of games to make. He has somehow the superpower to know what the players want. And he's the one who basically decides what games the company will be making, to what audience, how it will be launched. And then below this visionary leader, there is then the management team or the lead of the game team who's just making care that at the bottom, those who are executing are sort of executing this visionary CEO's ideas. And from the beginning, we thought that this is not the way to operate in a creative industry like game making. A record label would not decide on behalf of the artist what kind of music the artist should be making and how he or she should look like. At least we, as creators, don't believe in that. So from the beginning, Supercell created the cell model. So we turned the whole organizational structure upside down. We flip it totally. So now all the power is on the game creators. So it's actually the independent teams and the game teams who fully own their vision and their game. And the leads of those game teams are just there to make sure that the developers have all the resources they need. They have all the possibilities to execute their vision and own their game. And the CEO is basically at the bottom and trying to be as less powerful as possible, and only sort of coming to the game teams if there is some issue that needs to be sorted out, if there is some specific help that is needed, if there's sort of some resources lacking, maybe he's then the one who can help with those issues. So that was that. Thank you, kamsahamnida.